Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to see you. My name is Dustin Cormier, and welcome to How to Rock Astrology. Today, we are going to be talking about the placement of Mars in Sagittarius. It's a fun, excitable, outgoing, bit of a playboy sort of energy, at least in the archetype, although not every person with this placement is going to be a playboy and want to have lots of conquests for its own sake, but some shall. Depends on the other parts of your chart, obviously, what Pluto is doing in the south node, and what is the purpose, what role sexuality plays in a person's life. I often bring up the thing of sexuality. These videos are kind of centered on that in a certain way, because I got so much Scorpio in myself. My name is Dustin Cormier. This little picture of me, just so you know the person who's giving you this information. Leo rising, Scorpio sun, Sagittarius moon. So I definitely get the Sagittarius vibe. Welcome. I'm going to be speaking today from several texts. Basically getting at kind of like three different aspects of this placement. And then on the last one, we're going to read about the sexual nature of Mars and Sagittarius. First, we're going to talk about the aesthetic of I'm trying to teach astrology as I'm doing all these things. I want to talk about the psychological dynamic of just having Mars in a fire sign. Then we're going to build on what Mars. I consider Mars to be like the third best position. Mars in Sagittarius. It's like the third best position for Mars that could possibly be in a chart. So it's a good place to have Mars. We're going to talk about why I think that is. One of the reasons being that in Vedic astrology, we consider that Mars and Jupiter are friends. I guess I should say at this point, I'm a tropical Vedic astrologer. That's what I like to call myself. But I started off in Western astrology, and for anybody watching, I use the same measurements as Western astrology. So, if you're born in between October 21st to November 21st, between October 21st and November 21st, you were born in the sun sign of Scorpio. It's not peeled back a sign like it is in Vedic, the sidereal Vedic astrology. I'm a tropical Western astrologer. But I like to add in, I go by the Vedic philosophy. Western measurements, Vedic understanding. Although this is mostly a Western reading, I like to add my little Vedic things when I can. One of them being that Jupiter and Mars are friends, and this adds to why Mars in Sagittarius is the third best placement for Mars. And then after all of that, we're going to talk about the sexual nature of Mars and Sagittarius through erotic astrology by Phyllis Vega. So, thanks for hanging out for my little intro. Now let's just start getting a sense of first of all, Mars in general. This first reading comes from Stephen Arroyo's Chart Interpretation Handbook. We're asking what exactly is Mars, and this is like talking about the element of Mars in particular. The element of Mars is in a fire sign. The element shows what types of experiences and modes of activity stimulate one's physical energy, and with what energy one seeks to assert oneself, especially when it's getting stimulated in this way. How it happens, the modality, the expression of it. The element of Mars is the energy that feeds your need for physical excitement and is the mode through which you can express your aggressive powers to prove your strength. Some people do this in different ways. It describes the specific method you use to get what you want. Mars in air uses persuasion. It's the persuasion, the diplomacy, the tact, the aggressiveness of Mars in an air sign that helps them win in life. It doesn't need to be all muscle and aggressive. But for Mars in Sagittarius, Mars in a fire sign tends to use power and initiative. mobilized by some instinctive inspiration, which is a great thing for Mars, because this is part of this Vedic secret I've been talking about. Mars is friends with all of the planets that rule fire and water signs. That's Mars, Jupiter, Sun, and the Moon. Although Mars does not do well in Cancer. I don't think they're technically enemies or whatever, but Mars is debilitated in Cancer, obviously, so it doesn't do well there for reasons that we'll talk about. But Mars in a fire sign, anything ruled by Jupiter, Sagittarius and Pisces, Mars will do well there. Anything ruled by if it's in Leo, which is ruled by the Sun, Mars will do well there too. And of course, Mars would do well in its own signs, Aries and Scorpio. You notice that all those, Jupiter, the Sun, the Moon, and Mars, all rule fire and water signs. Whereas Venus, Mercury, and Saturn all rule earth and air signs. It shows a bit of a divide, and it shows that Mars does better when it's ruled by fire and water signs, because fire and water comes from within. It's not earth and air. It's not mind. It's not mental categorization. Mars doesn't do best when it's thinking about what it does. It doesn't want to build on this bestial animal, which is like coldly calculated and thinking about all the nth degrees and details. Mars is better as an instinctive, rolling off the chest, of natural expression of the body's own roots, of the spirit, of the inspiration. This is what the fire and sun sign ruled planets instigate. So it's a good thing to have Mars in a fire sign in this case. Mars in Leo is actually the worst of the three fire signs. Mars in Aries is probably... Mars in Aries and Mars in Sagittarius are tied for what's the best placement, in a way. Because Mars in Aries is in its own sign. That's true. It's a lot of strength because of that. But Mars in Sagittarius is the next sign over from Mars in Capricorn. We're going to talk about how Mars being close to its exaltation point is very important to the expression of this Mars. The reason is because exaltation actually happens by orb, not by but by proximity to the exaltation point. So Mars in Leo, even though it's in a fire sign, it's still right next door to Mars to Cancer, and that's not as good. Whereas Mars in Sagittarius is right next door to Capricorn. The fact that this is in a fire sign in Capricorn, or this close to Capricorn, means that it can be excitable, it has a lot of energy, it can bring it out, but it also is still being driven towards constructive, ideal discipline. Even though Mars in Sagittarius is quite whack because it's in the sign of Jupiter, since it's so close to Capricorn, it actually wants to put this whack, excitable, outgoing, inspired energy towards things which will be good for that inspiration, towards things that will allow the person to get a grip on Mars, on what Mars energy is. It's because it's so close to Capricorn. So this gives, like, not only is the Mars in Sagittarius like lusty and kind of like ready to go, but it can also like actually hold its physical energy, and won't just like, they can pop off, so to say, you know, like a Mars in Sagittarius guy could like do a lot of little rogering spread out in between things, rather than sex being this all-important, all-encompassing thing. They're more sportive and just fun about it, recreational about sex, really. And they can go for little spurts. It's the mutability of Mars and Sagittarius. But, again, because it's so close to Capricorn, it can be held. It can be made great. It can be disciplined and refined into an artful expression of this lusty Mars. So that's a double bonus. That's part of why Mars is so good in Sagittarius. Third best place, again, for Mars. Mars in Scorpio is a bit better because Scorpio is its own sign. And then Mars in Capricorn is in its exaltation, and that's the best place for Mars. So, continuing this little reading, of what Mars is. For a man, Mars shows how a man projects himself forcefully, assertively, and sexually. It indicates how a man gives of his power in a sexual relationship. In this case, with Sagittarius, it comes from the man's ability to draw, to express energy in scattered ways and towards many different scattered places, and to bridge himself between all these different things that's giving this energy to, but it's always driving him by his inspiration to go forward in his life and in his thinking. And this can make for some sexy juiciness when a man is thinking of all the different inspired ways in which he can aggressively or use his animal logic and direct it towards many different ways of enjoying the sexual experience. Not necessarily aggressively, but that's what Mars is. It's logical. It's how am I going to rock this person's world, right? So, Mars and Sagittarius can have lots of variety in their sexuality, but that doesn't mitigate the things that they do get into. Because whereas when Mars is in Gemini or Virgo, it's thinking too much and it's taking itself out of the instinct and the action of it. Whereas Mars in Sagittarius has all this variety and different things that it gets into, but these are essentially building on the singular instinct of the person's own sexual juices, of their own soul, of the unfoldment of their own soul and groove that excites them. It's all the experiences are building on themselves, on their own enjoyment of what makes them sexually active. And that's why the Mars energy stays in the Sagittarius. Even though it's looking at the person and talking, and it's like getting excited for what turns you on, the Mars and Sagittarius loves seeing other people get turned on too. But they deal with it through their own lustiness. And then it's just like, my lustiness has to meet yours. And I'm sure that it will, because we're getting this vibe, and this seems to be going up in the right place. And it'll always build on what the Mars in Sagittarius is. It's because, again, Mars in the fire signs goes by within the person, by their own initiative, their own drive. They have a reason to do what they're doing. So Mars shows how a man expresses his masculinity in all areas of leadership and initiative. So it's connected to a man's male ego. Of course, a lot of everything I just said is also translatable to a woman. But more specifically in a woman's chart, Mars is also a strong male image in her psyche. And she would love to have a man who kind of expresses Mars energy or any kind of energy towards this inspiration, towards this ability to adapt, to read a situation and go into it and build into it based on their knowledge, based on their lusty, juicy inspiration coming from themselves, their enjoyment of the inspiration that they're getting into. When a woman sees a man engaging that, it turns her on. When a woman sees a man just looking at a woman and thinking of all the different things that I could do to that lady, this is the kind of thing that would turn a Mars and Sagittarius woman on. It's the thought of that physical exploration. Where are you going to go with me? And it doesn't need, the partner doesn't need to have Mars and Sagittarius. The partner, anybody who has a Sagittarius or Pisces, what's the word? Involvement in their chart brings it out. Or like Jupiter in the ascendant would also turn a Mars and Sagittarius girl on, right? So Mars in the fire signs asserts themselves through direct physical action, initiative, and outgoing radiation of energy. The physical energy is stimulated by constant movement, confident enthusiasm, and dynamic action. These are all things that Mars wants to do anyway. Mars is the planet that gets out to the animal instincts. And the animal instincts are very much in the moment. They're not thought about in the mind. You don't digest them later in the mind. Although, having strength of Mars does show that you can take criticism in certain ways. And that is true. It shows if you have a strong Mars, it means tell me what I'm doing so that I can get better at it. And they might be combative, and it's like, oh, see, you're saying that I did this wrong. Well, how about this? And they'll combative and they'll defend the way they did something. But ultimately, it's like, do the combativeness with me. Tell me how I might be wrong. Tell me how my philosophy might be wrong. Tell me how the way I've been having sex. Tell me about the way that I'm communicating with you in a relationship is wrong. Please do, because I want to know what's best. But I'm going to fight you just to make sure that I'm not wrong. That's how these people work. And they will open themselves to the discipline, to the refinement of what is best, the best unfoldment of their Mars energy, because Mars is closer to Capricorn. It's the expression, it's the results, it's the import of their actions that they want, that's the value of their actions that they want to build on. It's the outside, it's the public viewing, it's glory and honor. These are the things that Mars being directed towards Capricorn as well as the 10th house. Mars is better closer to the 10th house because all of its activities are seen in the light of other people, and that's what it's inspired towards. And it takes them out of their criticism, makes them feel it less in their gut. When Mars is closer to Cancer, the Mars in this person is being critical about themselves, using themselves as the rubric. Mars does best when it's using others, when it's using a universal standard as a rubric. This is why Mars in Sagittarius, being close to Capricorn, it's sporty. It doesn't want to just like discipline itself to go up on a mountain and breathe in and breathe out and feel and internalize its energy and think about like, it doesn't want to like think manipulatively about how they can be happier with their partner. Like that's what Mars closer to Cancer does. Even Mars in Leo, they think about how their action can grab and wrangle the perfect emotional situation. And that's Mars in closer to Cancer. It's not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to do it, Mars's thing, for an instinctive security blanket. That security should come from you using your discipline in a way that you know will be proven to be objectively satisfying in front of, like, around others, with others equally. If you just judge it by, if you judge your actions and your discipline, if your discipline comes from how you feel, then you're never going to get a perfect handle on it. You need like to organize like yourself to go to the gym and have other people talk about your practice at the gym. These are the things that get all the things you're trying to do in life better. That's because Capricorn, that's Mars being closer to Capricorn, which it is here. You enjoy showing and proving and combatively checking for the sake of being best. You're at your best. You're inspired best. Mars being good towards Capricorn wants to do this. Wants to have, knows that like you won't internalize, how was I doing? How am I doing in my life? If you just start thinking about like whether it's this is what happens when like Mars is getting squashed by Saturn or Mars conjunct Saturn. The Mars begins to think internally like, did I do enough today? Am I strong enough? And then it tries to aggressively, obsessively put itself into something that's just too much for itself. When Mars is in Capricorn or close to Capricorn, like it is here in Sagittarius, it'll do its effort and it'll ask others, hey, have you seen, look at this thing I did. They'll perform it and just talk with other people, talk with their lover. I just did this thing. And people say, well, we'll say, wow, that shows you showed some progress there. And then they'll say, oh, good. Other people have seen that I'm gracefully doing this thing. I don't need to work. I don't need to kill myself to prove to myself that I'm going somewhere. And this way, Mars conserves its energy perfectly. That's the good thing about Mars being close to Capricorn. Now, the good thing about Mars being in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter, is that Mars is acting towards its noble instincts, its high ideals, its expansive, its inspiration from within itself. And that's what we're going to talk about next. This video is already turning out pretty long, but that's okay. Mars and Sagittarius. This next reading comes from Astrology, a Cosmic Science by Isabella M. Hickey. She notes that Mars in Sagittarius is a breezy, friendly, optimistic Mars. It's impulsive and sometimes unreliable because it scatters energy far and wide. This is just the fact of Mars being in Sagittarius. It is pushing its energy in different ways. That's not necessarily a bad thing because it learns about how it can best use itself. And that's good. Mars learns how to expand the expression of energy, how to expand the vital essence of the self, how to expand inspiration, and to get better at skills. Mars, this can make a good musician, for example, because they will be inspired to get better at their skills that they love, because they want to be seen in the glory of being good at whatever the discipline they're working towards. And it can be quiet. It doesn't need to necessarily be out in front of people. People seeing this Mars, again, it's close to Capricorn, and they will try to judge their action based on what others think of it. But it will be not their action, but their discipline, their self-refinement. Have I refined myself enough? They'll use others. They'll use the rubric of something outside themselves for that. So even though they scatter their energy far and wide, it's still them building on their sense of, how do I best express myself? How do I hold in my energies and channel them to the best places? Mars in Sagittarius often talks too much. They make good salesmen. They're an active traveler. The average type of Mars in Sagittarius is interested in sports and gambling, but the higher type is interested in religion and philosophy, in inspiration, in harnessing their disciplined energy towards a humanitarian cause or a role that they are inspired to play in life. And this gives the Mars more and more reason to discipline itself. I want to be a protector. I want to be a golden emblem of what it is to be a human. And in order to do that, the human body is in their body. And so I want to work out at the gym and I want to exercise because I want to be seen in the glory and radiance of using my animal energy at its best. That's the philosophical way of bringing out this Mars and Sagittarius energy. What would keep you disciplined? What would keep you practicing on guitar? Like if you had to learn guitar, you have to practice it. And sometimes people are like, like Mars in Cancer or Mars in like Leo would be like, this guitar it doesn't always make me feel good from within, but I know that I will feel good. I know people will love me if I play this guitar and get better at it. But when it comes to the practicing, it's like, I get bored of it because I don't have the glory yet. Mars and Sagittarius can quietly hack away at practicing because they know that this is what I'm here to do. This is me putting my chips towards an inspiration that will bloom into something special for me. And others will see it and know it's glorious, but it's ultimately for my own desire, for my own greatness. It's the philosophical inspiration really draws this Mars to its highest, noblest ideals. Although Mars in Sagittarius is very independent, they want no restrictions of any kind. Don't fence me in is the battle cry of Mars in Sagittarius. Now, their energies really need to go to physical channels. Jupiter is very much this like internal within divinity that needs to feel itself grip something physical, something tangible in the world, and to move it, to feel themselves literally expanding like a baby bird out of an egg. It's the classic Jupiter thing. I want to just constantly shed the snakeskin, shed the snakeskin. I mean, the Mars and Scorpio thing is really a lot of that phoenix, like going towards the snake shedding. This Mars wants to be done with the shedding and to get into the next inspired moment, closer to the inspiration that comes after breaking out of the shell, because Sagittarius is after Scorpio. So their energies do need to go into physical channels to move stuff around. They're apt to be blunt and tactless if Mars is afflicted. This is a Mars which is building on its instincts, and if Mars is in Sagittarius with, say, like Saturn there, or if the Sun is completely like within like 5 degrees of Mars here and is combust, then this Mars will get agitated. Or if Mercury is conjunct Mars here, because Mercury is an enemy of Mars. The Mercury will blend with the animal instincts and make the person think too much, whereas they're trying to act by instinct, and in their instinct, they will always doubt themselves, and this will, like, they want the honor and glory and grace of having built on something that comes from their animal drive, their animal instincts, their discipline. Mercury or the Sun agitating or Saturn agitating this would show that there's something getting in the way of Mars acting by instinct for its own sake of its own desire to be good at something. Whatever that planet that obstructs it is will get in the way of it. Now, not every planet will obstruct it. Venus is benefic. It's neutral to Mars. It won't mess it up. Jupiter will actually be... Jupiter conjunct Mars would be a great thing. It would hurt Jupiter a little bit because Mars is actually a malefic. But in any case, this person can be blunt and tactless if the Mars is afflicted. The reason is that if the Mars doesn't, again, it doesn't feel it's doing itself right, because the other planet is obstructing it, and then they start saying, darn it, like they make excuses for themselves, and then their ego is important to them. And this is a positive thing for Mars, because using Mars to positively express your ego through the way Mars and Sagittarius tends to do, it can be a good thing. But they act on instinct, and their instinct is they're in it, which is a good thing for Mars, because Mars needs to be actively engaged in its instinct. But this just comes at the price that, like, any planet obstructing Mars would show that they need to feel like they're grabbing, like they don't want to feel shame. They don't want to feel egg on their face. They don't want to feel like they did the wrong thing. And if they miss the initiative because of whatever planet is afflicting it, they'll feel embarrassed, and they'll say, look, everybody, I messed up, but it's okay because I'm still doing all these things, and they'll try to rectify it. They'll try to rectify, and they'll feel guilty, and they'll try to rectify whatever caused them to stop themselves from getting to the best place they could be. And this will cause them to be blunt and tactless, meaning like they'll just say, ugh. They'll get agitated for not being able to get where they want to go. I used to be in a band with a guy who had Mars in Sagittarius. He had some things obstructing his Mars, and so there were some times where he'd just grit his teeth and say, look, no matter what, I have a will to do this thing, and we're going to get through it. And he could be very, too much, too like mean and pointed, criticizing, in order to get everybody just stop messing around and let's do what we have to do. That energy can be very useful. It's just that when another planet is blocking it, the expansiveness comes through the color of the planet. In this case, it was like the sun, and also like Rahu in this person, and it amplified it in this agitated way. I digress. Anything like that you can always put towards the right way. If you just see it in the chart and have the understanding and discipline, if you are engaged to see what psychological thing is troubling you, work out with a therapist or somebody close to you, and work out these things in the chart. The charts are not fatalistic in this sense, as long as we have self-realization. Mars in Sagittarius needs to recognize the rights of others as well as their own. They can be rather pushy in this regard, and again, it's part of what makes Mars great, because it says, I don't care if others are obstructing me. I have an inspiration that I have to go towards, and I will read the book. I will do it what's right, but I will do it, and I will even blend rules if I have to. Jupiter, Mars and Sagittarius can be a bit of a funky rule bender, but they're like, if the ends justify the means, then whatever. It really depends on Jupiter's placement to decide whether that will actually be grossly unethical and rather egotistical. Of course, the placement of Jupiter for this particular person is a huge part of the expression of this placement, because the strength of Jupiter will show that the person wants to be inspired towards their ideals, of course, because the Mars is in Sagittarius. Now, if the ideals, if the Jupiter is delighted by Venus somehow and trine to Venus, or trine to its friends, the Sun or Mars, this will bring out the highest inspiration of Jupiter, and therefore this will give strength to this Mars, because if Jupiter's doing what it's supposed to do, the person will be inspired to things that are worth being inspired towards, and this will give the Mars more energy, more capacity, more satisfaction, more feeling like it's on the right path, and more, therefore, because it's more inspired, it gets more ability to latch on to what this inspiration is and to what's dragging them towards the high, skillful expression of whatever it is that the person, whatever Mars means to the rising sign, right? You know, whatever Sagittarius means to the rising sign is also being affected by Mars here too. So, you know, if Jupiter is within, in Vedic astrology, we say, if one planet is 4 houses ahead of or behind, it's like this, okay? If Jupiter is in the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th house ahead of Mars, or it's in the 12th or the 11th or the 10th house from Mars, then Jupiter will be a friend to Mars. And this will give great strength to Mars's placement in Sagittarius, because it's close. Although Mars and Jupiter conjunct together, it can damage the Jupiter a bit, because they're too hard on themselves with their inspiration, and they stop the open natural flow of inspiration from happening, because it's Mars is grabbing Jupiter by the head and saying, look, we need to be inspired, so you better go out there and be fucking inspired. Get out there. And then the Jupiter loses its sense of like, what actually inspires me? I don't know, because Dad told me that I should play soccer when I was 5 and it felt good, and like, okay, that's what's happening. You know, that's not how Jupiter best finds its inspiration, from within itself. But ultimately, Mars being in the same sign as Jupiter can still be good, again, because they're friends. These are all things I want people to consider and think about when considering the Mars placement of any Mars placement. Now, with all that being said, I've reached a little further into this video than I thought I would, but that's okay. The last bit of this video, we are going to talk about Mars and Sagittarius from one final book. It's Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega. This is going to be the final bit, talking about the sexual and how Mars and Sagittarius and this lusty, inspired energy translates in interpersonal connections with others, in the bedroom and in romance and whatever else. Mars in Sagittarius produces some of the highest levels of physical energy and enthusiasm in the zodiac. With your zest for adventure and your love of change and travel, you have difficulty sitting still for very long. The hallmark of this position is a feeling of invincibility. It's Mars, animal instinct, drive, power, being perceived through the infinite, expansive potential of Sagittarius and Jupiter. You probably feel as if you were born under a lucky star. In actuality, you do succeed in life, because you do not consider failure an option. Even Mars in Capricorn can just be bummed out by failures, although they ultimately see it as constructive and objective, and it's, you know, Mars in Capricorn is still the best position for Mars, but everything has its ills and whatever. The ill of Mars and Sagittarius, if anything, is that the energy can be scattered a little bit. But one thing is for sure is that this Mars and Sagittarius will not consider failure an option, because Jupiter is pulling the Mars instinct to win outward, and can just, like, the smell of like pancakes for a bear, it's like roving through these rose bushes, it's like, ow, all these thorns and stuff, but it's like, oh my god, I don't even care, I gotta go get those pancakes. It's a silly metaphor of mine. So that's why this person can do well in life. Mars, and this also has to do with the sexual conquest power that this Mars in Sagittarius has. Now, this doesn't necessarily lead to aggressiveness, where like no means no, or breaking past the, what's the word, consent barriers. I mean, if this Mars is really terribly afflicted, then they can be that kind of rule breaker. But generally, though, this person wants to be seen in the positive light of how sexual energy ought to be seen. So they're not just going to be lusting around. They wouldn't just like to fuck something just for the sake of fucking something. They want a conquest that they know is a hard one to get. And they might even challenge themselves to find lovers who they can see everybody agrees is a real catch. And this is part of why this person can get a very idealistic, in the eyes of others, lover. Mars in this sign is spontaneous, optimistic, impatient, and argumentative. You approach sex as if it were a sport or game, something to be enjoyed but not taken too seriously, because it's not necessarily about the sex, it's more about the mutual expression of soul, acknowledgement, validation, and passion, and really ego validation in a lot of way, but also security between the person and their lover. They don't need to necessarily take it all that seriously or deeply, unlike some placements like Mars in Scorpio, Mars in Pisces. They can. Mars and Sagittarius here can make a great lover if you've got other planets in the 8th house, or if you've got an emphasis of Scorpio or Libra or Taurus or anything like that. Then they will take this sort of like, how do I best do this love thing in a way that is like them learning the real craft of love. But it's the being an artisan of something is more the reason why this person would become like a sex expert. It's because I want to be an artisan craftsman of some kind of art or performance, which is, again, part of the strength of this Mars. It's not like looking for to be good at sex or to really be egotistically known for pleasuring others and that's good, satisfying to their like needs. It's more like that's more of a Mars and Cancer thing. This Mars is more just about like wanting to be an artisan at lovemaking, an artisan at something, and this inspiration comes through in their lovemaking. Oh, you like you like the wares, huh? You value your independence, and you're afraid of being tied down. You may decide to run off if things get too dull or boring. It's part of the inspiration. Is this person drawing out the best in me? Again, if you find a lover who keeps, like, that's part of what would excite you, is if a lover has a bit of conquest with you, bops you on the nose and has a bit of like youthful, witty, competitive sort of like not game playing, not like bad game playing, but sort of like I don't know, you could be like if you're a woman, for example, you might just do something saucy where it's like, can you open this, like, it's like you like, hey, I don't need no man to open my jars, and then you'll open and then like the man will be like, oh yeah, and then you like open the jar and just like really make sure you do. I don't know, I'm trying to think of like some idea where there would be a competitive sport where the woman could say, oh, what, you think like I can't do it myself, huh? Just some way of combating with your lover. That was an example. I'm more of trying to say like that. Yeah, here's a better one. Basically, it's if the woman gives the jar to the guy, and you as the Mars and Sagittarius say, oh, what? So you need a strong man to undo this, huh? And then you'll do it. And then you as a Mars and Sagittarius person would love if that woman would be like, oh, what? You think I can't do it? You think I'm not capable? Like, how about that one time when you, like, I don't know, for her to give back in that competitive spirit would turn on the Mars and Sagittarius person who's being cheeky by saying, oh, well, it looks like you need a big, strong person to do this, huh? Play with the competitiveness. Your partner that would spice you up. Somebody who would play with that, like, oh yeah? Oh, you think so? That teenage fun youthfulness. So, you, Mars and Sagittarius, you want honesty, friendship, and fun in an intimate relationship. Sharing adventures or a philosophical discussion piques your interest, and a potential partner with a good sense of humor wins your affection. With this placement of Mars, you may fall in love with a friend or have a fading romance turn into a lasting friendship. Jupiter is the sign of friendship, and Mars is this aggressive, territorial holding. And so Mars wants to express itself through a friendship here, a person who feels like at a very basic level, it's not just, you're not just a lover. Or you're not just like married to a person just because you want to be married to them. You're typically using your territorial grasp and getting it through a lover, and this is, you know, like through a friend. Sagittarius is very much this, like, based on friendship, based on enjoying something as a mutual camaraderie with other equals in some interest, some enjoyment of just going to the swimming pond and just going for a dip in the pond and just talking philosophically about this and that. So these are the kind of things where the Mars here would find themselves able to push through and even to get at a juicy point with people. It makes for a wonderful wandering wanderlust lover. Just a person who's like, where is this person going to go next? You know? So this video has already been quite long, so I think I'm going to end it for there, folks, for now. I hope you guys dug this. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. Keep your eyes peeled because as time goes on, I'm going to be releasing videos describing the nature of Mars and Sagittarius when it is paired with the 12 sun signs of tropical astrology. Thanks for watching, folks. See you guys on the next one. Let me know in the comments if you dug it, subscribe. Let me know what you think. I'm curious as what you thought about the reading. See ya.